I wasn't looking for anything. That's the part that stings the most. I wasn't suspicious. I wasn't paranoid. I wasn't playing detective in my own home. I was just trying to watch a game. It started like any other Saturday. Julia was at work, or at least that's what she told me. I had the house to myself, a cold beer in my hand, and the game playing on our living room TV. Our shared tablet sat on the coffee table next to me, still open from Julia's morning coffee ritual. At halftime, I reached for it, intending to pull up some sports stats, maybe check if my fantasy team was finally worth a damn. But the second my fingers brushed the screen, a notification popped up. You make it so hard to focus when you wear that dress to work. Wish I could rip it off you right now. My heart stopped. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Some stupid spam message. Maybe one of those auto-generated scams trying to rope her into some kind of shady clickbait. Then, another one came in right after. Don't forget, babe. Lunch in your office. Door looked. Just like yesterday. I stared at the screen, my stomach twisting into something ugly. This wasn't spam. This wasn't some mistake. This was real. And it was happening right under my nose. I hesitated for half a second before my hands moved on their own, tapping the message open. The sender's name? Just an initial, T. But the messages, the ones before it, painted a crystal clear picture of what was going on. Yesterday was incredible. You taste even sweeter when you're stressed. You drive me crazy. Every time I see you at work, I want to bend you over your desk. I don't know how much longer I can keep my hands off you in the office. You're gonna get us caught. Couldn't breathe. Julia, my wife, the woman I'd spent 8 years building a life with. She was cheating on me. I gripped the tablet so hard my knuckles went white, my mind racing with every worst-case scenario at once. Who was T? How long had this been going on? Had she ever lied straight to my face about it? Of course she had. That's how cheating works, right? A memory surfaced last Tuesday night. She came home late, claiming an emergency client meeting had run over. I'd kissed her, told her to relax while I warmed up the leftovers in the fridge. She had smiled at me, thanked me, even rested her head against my shoulder for a moment. Was that before or after she let this guy rip her dress off in her office? I clenched my jaw, swallowing down the bile creeping up my throat. I wanted to punch something, throw the tablet across the room, scream. But none of that would give me answers. So I kept scrolling. And that's when I found something that made my stomach drop even harder. You know what's at stake, right? If I don't get that promotion, your husband's gonna find out about us. I read it again and again, but the words didn't change. This wasn't just an affair. This guy was blackmailing my wife, and she was playing right into his hands. I must have read that last message 10 times, trying to make it make sense. My wife wasn't just cheating on me. She was being used, manipulated, cornered into keeping this affair going. Or was she? Because here's the thing about Julia. She's not some weak, naive woman who gets pushed around. She's sharp, calculated, the kind of person who always knows the angle, who always makes sure the odds are in her favor. So why the hell was she letting this guy blackmail her? Unless she wasn't being blackmailed at all. Unless she wanted him to get that promotion. My hands were shaking as I scrolled further back through their messages, looking for some kind of confirmation, some proof that Julia wasn't just a victim in this. I needed to know, was this some desperate mistake she'd been forced into, or had she chosen this? And the answer came in the form of a message from 2 weeks ago. I'll talk to the senior partners, but you need to be patient. If Marcus gets suspicious, this all blows up. I exhaled slowly, forcing myself to stay calm. So, she wasn't just going along with it. She was actively helping him. I leaned back against the couch, gripping the tablet like it might slip through my fingers. My ears were ringing. My pulse was pounding so hard I could feel it in my teeth. This wasn't just an affair. This was strategy. Julia was using me, using our marriage, to keep this whole thing under wraps while she pulled strings to get this guy promoted. I thought back to last month when she first mentioned her rising star coworker. Some new hotshot in her firm, young, ambitious, a real go-getter. I hadn't thought much of it at the time. Julia's firm was cutthroat, And she was always keeping an eye on the talent, figuring out who was worth investing in. I remember laughing when she told me about him over dinner. "Sounds like a younger version of you," she had said, smiling across the table at me, her fingers brushing mine. "Always hungry, always climbing." I had smiled back. I had kissed her. I had believed every damn word. And now I knew the truth. This guy wasn't just some promising employee. He was the one she was sleeping with. And she was making sure he climbed that ladder one way or another. I set the tablet down carefully, like it might explode if I handled it too roughly. I needed air. I needed time to think. I needed to not be sitting in this house, our house, where every single thing around me suddenly felt like a lie. So I grabbed my keys and left. The drive was a blur. My hands gripped the wheel tighter than they needed to, my knuckles white against the leather. I had no idea where I was going. I just knew I couldn't be there. Not in the house where Julia had kissed me before work. Not on the couch where we had watched movies together. Not in the kitchen where she had probably texted him while standing 2 feet away from me. I ended up at the bar a few blocks away, the one I only ever went to when I needed to think. It wasn't fancy, but it was quiet, and right now that's all I needed. I ordered a drink and sat in the corner, trying to piece this together. If I confronted Julia now, what would she say? Would she cry? Would she beg? Would she lie straight to my face? Or worse, would she look me in the eye and tell me she had no regrets? Because that's what was eating me alive. Not just the betrayal, but the fact that she might not be sorry. That she might have gone into this fully aware of what she was doing, knowing the risk, knowing what it would do to me if I ever found out. I took a long sip of my drink, my mind spiraling. I had options. I could go home, wait for her, and let her dig herself deeper into her lies before I dropped the hammer. I could gather more evidence, play dumb, see how far she was willing to take this. Or I could burn it all down right now. But something in my gut told me I wasn't ready. Not yet. Because there was one thing I still didn't know. Who the hell was T? By the time I got back home, it was past midnight. Julia's car was already in the driveway, the lights in our bedroom still on. She was probably getting ready for bed, completely unaware that her entire world was about to change. I stepped inside quietly, the house feeling different now, like the walls had secrets, like the air itself had turned against me. Julia's voice floated down the hall, soft and casual, like she hadn't spent the day sneaking around behind my back. "Yeah, I think we're all set for tomorrow. Shouldn't be a problem." I froze. She was still on the phone. I took slow, silent steps toward the bedroom, my heart hammering in my chest. Yeah, I know. I'll handle it. Trust me." My hands curled into fists. "All right, see you in the morning." I heard the soft chime of her phone locking, then the sound of her walking toward the bed. I stepped into the doorway, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. "Who were you talking to?" Julia spun around, her eyes widening just slightly before she smoothed her expression into something neutral. "Oh, just work," she said easily, slipping her phone onto the nightstand. "You're home late. Everything okay?" I forced a smile. "Yeah, just had a lot on my mind." She tilted her head slightly, studying me. "You sure? You look tense." I shrugged. "Long day." She walked toward me, pressing her hands against my chest, looking up at me with those same eyes that had once made me believe in forever. "You should let me help with that." I almost laughed. Here she was, offering me comfort, acting like the loving wife while her phone, our tablet, held proof that she was screwing some guy from her office. I leaned down, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "Maybe tomorrow," I murmured. Her smile faltered just slightly, but she nodded. "Okay." I climbed into bed beside her, feeling her warmth, breathing in her familiar scent. And I made a silent promise to myself. I was going to find out everything. I was going to expose every single one of her lies. And when the time was right, when she least expected it, I was going to destroy her world the way she had destroyed mine. Lying next to Julia that night was the hardest thing I'd ever done. I could feel her breathing, steady and peaceful, like she didn't have a care in the world, like she wasn't living a double life, like she hadn't just gotten off the phone with the man she was sleeping with. My mind wouldn't shut off. I replayed everything over and over, the messages, the blackmail, the way she touched me like I was still the only one. But most of all, I couldn't stop thinking about T. Who was he? I had a name to find, a face to put to the betrayal. And if Julia wasn't going to give me the truth, I'd take it myself. Julia left for work at 7:30, just like always. She kissed me goodbye, gave me that sweet, trusting smile, and walked right out the door like nothing was wrong. The second her car was out of sight, I grabbed the tablet. The messages were still there, mocking me, daring me to go deeper. I scrolled up, looking for any clue about T. Something that would give me a name, an email, a phone number, anything. And then I found it. A message from a few days ago, buried between their usual disgusting exchanges. T, don't be stupid. You'll get your promotion. Just let me handle it. And the reply, Fine, Giulia. But if it doesn't happen soon, Marcus is going to know everything. I clenched my jaw. This guy, whoever he was threatening my wife. Which meant, in some twisted way, I wasn't just dealing with a cheating spouse. I was dealing with someone who thought they had leverage over me. And that changed everything. I needed to find T. I started with Julia's work directory. Her company had an internal site listing all employees. I scrolled through the names, looking for anyone with a T. Nothing obvious. Then I checked her LinkedIn. She had over 500 connections, but I filtered it down to colleagues at her firm. I scanned the list until my eyes landed on a name that made my stomach twist. Tyler Dawson. Young. Cocky. The kind of guy who took gym selfies in dress shirts with the sleeves rolled up. His bio bragged about his aggressive approach to corporate success and how he thrived in competitive environments. But the kicker? He had been recently promoted. A week ago. Right around the same time Julia had sent that message about making sure his promotion happened. I clicked on his profile picture, staring at his smug face. It had to be him. Tyler Dawson, the guy screwing my wife. The guy using her to climb the corporate ladder. The guy who thought he had power over me. I felt something dark curl in my chest. He had no idea who he was messing with. I could have sat on this information. I could have planned my next move carefully, gathered more evidence. But I was too angry, so I dialed Julia's office. Good morning, Mitchell and Carter Law. How may I direct your call? I forced my voice to stay even. Tyler Dawson's office, please. One moment. The line rang twice before he picked up. Tyler Dawson. His voice was smooth, confident, like a guy who thought he was untouchable. I gripped the phone tighter. We need to talk. There was a pause. Then his voice sharpened. Who is this? I exhaled slowly. You know exactly who this is. Another pause. Longer this time. Then, a low chuckle. Ah, Marcus. I felt my blood pressure spike. You've got about 10 seconds to tell me why the hell you think you can blackmail my wife. He didn't even sound rattled. If anything, he sounded amused. Relax, man. No need to get aggressive. I'm sure we can come to an understanding. I gritted my teeth. We already have an understanding, Tyler. I understand that you're screwing my wife. I understand that you think you can manipulate her. And I understand that you have no idea what you've just started. He exhaled dramatically. Listen, Marcus, I get that you're upset, but Julia made her choices. I didn't force her into anything. I clenched my fists. And the threats? Telling her I'd find out if she didn't get you that promotion? What do you call that? A little incentive, he said smoothly. Besides, let's be honest. She was going to leave you sooner or later. I just helped speed things up. I saw red. I was about to say something I couldn't take back. But Tyler wasn't done. Here's the deal, man, he continued. Julia and I have, let's call it a mutually beneficial relationship. She gets excitement, I get career growth. It works out for everyone. But if you make this a problem, well, I have proof. Messages. Pictures. If this gets ugly, I make sure it gets really ugly. I gripped the phone so hard I thought it might crack. You think I'm scared of you? I said, my voice low. I think you're pissed off. And I think that makes you reckless. I forced myself to take a breath. This guy was good. He knew how to get under people's skin. He probably had years of practice manipulating people to get what he wanted. But he wasn't dealing with just anyone. He was dealing with me. "Enjoy the promotion, Tyler," I said coldly, "because it's going to be the last thing you ever take from me." Then I hung up. I had what I needed. I knew Julia was cheating. I knew who she was cheating with. I knew this wasn't just a fling. It was a game of power and leverage, which meant I had to play the game better. Tyler thought he had control. He thought he held all the cards. He had no idea I was about to flip the entire table. I grabbed my laptop and started working. If Tyler wanted to play dirty, I'd show him what real destruction looked like. Because this wasn't about saving my marriage anymore. This was about ending both of them. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling while Julia slept soundly beside me, oblivious to the fact that her entire world was about to collapse. Tyler Dawson thought he was untouchable. Thought he could use my wife like a stepping stone, blackmail her into getting him ahead, and then toss her aside when he was done. He thought he could manipulate me, too, scare me into silence with the threat of exposure. What he didn't understand was that I wasn't scared. I was furious, and fury makes a man dangerous. The next morning, I kissed Julia on the forehead before she left for work. She smiled, running her fingers down my arm like she hadn't just spent the last 6 months betraying me, like she wasn't still lying to my face, like I was still the clueless husband she could keep wrapped around her finger. I smiled back. It was almost impressive how easily I slipped into the act. I played the part of the doting husband perfectly, told her I'd probably work from home that day, maybe go for a run later. I even asked what she wanted for dinner. She laughed, teasing me about ordering takeout instead. That was fine. By the time dinner rolled around, she wouldn't have an appetite anyway, because by then, everything would be set in motion. The moment she pulled out of the driveway, I got to work. I had 2 things to handle, Julia and Tyler. And I wasn't just going to expose them. I was going to ruin them. Tyler had made one mistake. He assumed I was just some clueless husband. Some poor idiot who would either look the other way or fall apart once I found out the truth. He had no idea who he was dealing with. Because the thing is, I've spent years working in corporate strategy. I know how people operate. I know how to spot weakness. And most importantly, I know how to weaponize it. Tyler had left a trail, and now I just had to follow it. First, I needed leverage. He said he had proof, messages, pictures. But he wasn't the only one holding evidence. I already had their texts from the tablet. But I wanted more. I needed something undeniable. So I did the one thing Julia never thought I would do. I hacked into her work email. Well, technically, I didn't hack it. I just knew her passwords. Julia was smart in a lot of ways, but she was also predictable. And when you've been married to someone for nearly a decade, you pick up on their habits. She reused passwords. She kept things simple. And within 2 minutes, I was staring at her inbox. At first, it was just boring office chatter, client meetings, schedules, legal documents. But then I found it. A hidden folder labeled personal. I clicked it open, and there they were. Dozens of emails between Julia and Tyler. Some were short and professional, masked as innocent work discussions. But others were anything but innocent. "We can't keep meeting in the office, T. It's too risky. Come on, Jules. You know you love the thrill. I'm serious. If Marcus finds out, it'll destroy everything. Then make sure he doesn't." My jaw tightened as I kept scrolling. Then I found the attachments. Photos, video clips. Some were taken in their office, some in a hotel room. And the worst part? Julia had taken most of them herself. For a moment, I just sat there, staring at the screen. It wasn't just about sex. This wasn't some impulsive, heat-of-the-moment affair. This was calculated, planned. They had documented it. And for what?
À promotion?
A little excitement? My stomach churned, but I pushed the feeling down. I didn't have time for emotions. I forwarded everything to a private email, then wiped the login history. Now I had what I needed. Next, I focused on Tyler. It didn't take long to dig up dirt on him. He was exactly the type of guy I expected, cocky, reckless, and just smart enough to think he was invincible. A quick deep dive into his history, and I found something interesting. His resume was exaggerated, to say the least. Claimed he had years of high-level experience when, in reality, most of his big projects were ones he barely contributed to. He had also been fired from his last job under suspicious circumstances. I made a few calls, reached out to a former colleague of his under the pretense of a networking opportunity. And sure enough, the real story came out. Tyler had gotten too close to another executive's wife. That time, he had been caught before he could blackmail her. But it was enough for them to quietly push him out, burying the scandal before it became public. Pattern of behavior, a repeat offender. That was all I needed. Because the people in Julia's firm, they wouldn't risk their reputation for some bottom feeder like Tyler. And once they realized he was a liability, they'd drop him instantly. By noon, everything was set. I had the emails, the photos, the proof of his past. And now it was time to light the match. I started with an anonymous email to Julia's senior partners. Your new rising star, Tyler Dawson, has a history of inappropriate workplace relationships. He uses women to advance his career and threatens to expose them if they don't comply. Attached, you'll find proof that he's repeating the same pattern at your firm. I attached the emails, the pictures, the text messages, everything. Then I sent a similar email to their HR department, making sure it would be flagged as urgent. And just for good measure, I BCC'd Tyler himself. I wanted him to see it coming. I wanted him to know it was me. By 3 p.m., I got my first message. Julia, Marcus, call me. Now. I ignored it. 5 minutes later, another one. Marcus, please. I need to talk to you. Then Tyler. You think this is over? You have no idea who you're messing with. I smirked. Oh, but I did. Tyler had played his little game, thinking he could manipulate and blackmail his way to the top. He thought he had power. But he forgot one simple truth. Real power belongs to the one who sees the game before it starts. And I had just ended his. I closed my laptop and sat back, exhaling slowly. Now all that was left was Julia. I checked my watch. She'd be home in 2 hours. And I was finally ready to greet her properly. By the time Julia got home, I was already sitting in the living room, waiting for her. I heard her car pull into the driveway. Heard the car door slam shut. Then, the frantic sound of heels clicking against the pavement as she rushed to the front door. I didn't move, didn't even blink when she flung the door open and stepped inside. Her face pale, eyes wide with panic. Marcus! I held up a hand. Shut the door. She hesitated. For a second, I saw something flicker in her eyes. Fear? Guilt? Maybe both. But she obeyed. The door clicked shut behind her. I gestured to the couch. Sit. She walked over slowly, her movements stiff, like she was bracing for impact. She perched on the edge of the couch, gripping her purse so tightly her knuckles turned white. Marcus, save it. Her mouth snapped shut. The silence between us stretched, thick and suffocating. And then I finally spoke. How long? Julia swallowed hard. Marcus, please. How long? I repeated, my voice sharp enough to cut through her excuses before she could even form them. Her hands trembled in her lap. 6 months. I exhaled slowly, leaning back against the chair. 6 months. Half a year of deception. Half a year of lying to my face. Half a year of sneaking around, using our bed, our house, our life together as nothing more than a cover for her affair. And she had the audacity to look scared? I should have felt something then. Anger, disgust, sadness. But I didn't. I just felt done. You lied to me. Every single day. You came home, kissed me, told me you loved me, and all the while, you were screwing that kid in your office. Julia flinched. Marcus, it wasn't like that. Then tell me what it was like. She opened her mouth, then shut it again. Because she knew. She knew there was no excuse, no explanation that could make this okay. And yet, she still tried. I never meant for this to happen. I laughed. Actually laughed. You never meant for it to happen? That's your excuse? So what, you tripped and landed on his lap? Accidentally scheduled hotel rooms? Accidentally sent him naked pictures? She turned red, looking down at her lap. It started as something small. Something harmless. I clenched my jaw. Harmless? You think this was harmless? I didn't think it would go this far, she blurted. It wasn't supposed to mean anything. But it did. Her breath hitched. Did you love him? I asked, my voice eerily calm. She didn't answer right away. And that pause, that tiny moment of hesitation, told me everything. Jesus Christ. I let out a bitter chuckle. You did, didn't you? No, she snapped, eyes suddenly wild, desperate. No, Marcus, I didn't. I swear I didn't love him. It was a mistake. A mistake, I echoed. A mistake is forgetting to pay a bill. A mistake is leaving the stove on. What you did, that was a choice. Over and over again, you chose this. You chose to lie to me. You chose to betray me. And worst of all, I leaned forward, my voice dropping lower. You chose him. Julia's eyes filled with tears. Marcus, please. I ignored her. And now, it's all come crashing down, hasn't it? I gestured toward her. Your little golden boy got his promotion. And now the whole firm knows exactly how he got there. Her head snapped up. What? I smiled, slow and cold. Oh, you didn't hear? I feigned surprise. Tyler's done. I sent everything, every text, every email, every photo to HR, to the senior partners, to anyone who needed to see it. Her lips parted, her breathing sharp and uneven. You didn't. I did. Her hands flew to her mouth, her whole body trembling. Marcus, you don't understand. This will ruin me. No, Julia. I cut her off. You ruined yourself. She shook her head, tears spilling down her cheeks. Please, we can fix this. We can work through this. I stood up. There is no we anymore, Julia. Her face crumpled. No, don't say that. Marcus, we can get past this. You really think that? I asked, tilting my head. You think I could ever look at you the same way again? Sleep next to you without wondering if you're thinking about him? Wake up every morning and pretend like this never happened. She sobbed, shaking her head wildly. I'll do anything. Please. I love you. I laughed again. No, you don't. You don't get to say that. Because if you really loved me, Julia, you never would have done this in the first place. She reached for me, but I stepped back. I'll have the divorce papers sent over in the morning. Her sobs turned into a full-blown wail. Marcus, please, don't do this. I turned and walked away. She kept screaming my name, kept begging, kept sobbing. But I didn't stop, didn't turn around, didn't even hesitate as I stepped out the front door, leaving her behind in the ruins of everything she had destroyed. By the time I reached my car, I felt lighter, freer, because for the first time in months, maybe years, Julia wasn't my problem anymore. And neither was Tyler. I had burned it all to the ground, and I didn't regret a damn thing. The house was behind me, Julia's cries, her desperate pleading. It was all fading into the background. I stepped into my car, shut the door, and sat there for a moment, letting the silence settle over me. Then I smiled. Not because I was happy, not because I felt good, but because, for the first time in months, I was in control again. I had spent the last 6 months unknowingly living in a lie, trapped in a marriage where I was nothing more than a placeholder while Julia entertained herself with some corporate ladder-climbing idiot. But now I was the one pulling the strings. Tyler thought he had played the game well. Julia thought she had me fooled. They had no idea what real destruction looked like. But they were about to find out. I drove aimlessly for a while, letting the city blur past me. I needed time to think, time to breathe. I wasn't just done with Julia, I was done playing defense. Tyler still had to pay. Sure, his career was already in flames. The HR emails, the senior partners, the sheer weight of the evidence. I had made sure his little promotion turned into his professional execution. But that wasn't enough. Because he wasn't just some random guy who had an affair with my wife. He was a manipulator. Predator. He had a pattern. And I was going to make sure he never got the chance to do this to anyone else again. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found the number I needed. Greg Collins. A former colleague. Someone who owed me a favor. Someone who just so happened to have connections in investigative journalism. I hit call. Collins. Greg. It's Marcus. There was a brief pause, then a chuckle. Damn, man. Haven't heard from you in ages. What's up? I've got a story for you. Oh. His tone shifted, curious. It's about a guy named Tyler Dawson. He's a fraud, a blackmailer, and he's been using women in the workplace to advance his career. I've got proof. Emails, texts, photos. Even a record of him getting fired from his last job for pulling the same stunt. Greg whistled low. That's heavy, man. You sure you want to go public with this? I don't just want to go public, I said, my voice cold. I want to bury him. A beat of silence. Then Greg chuckled again, this time with a sharper edge. You always did play the long game, Marcus. Send me what you've got. I'll make some calls. Appreciate it. Oh, I don't think you'll appreciate it as much as Tyler will. I hung up, my hand steady as I forwarded every last piece of evidence. Tyler Dawson had spent his whole career stepping on people to get ahead. Now, the entire world was about to watch him fall. I checked my messages. Julia had called 11 times. Sent a string of desperate texts. Julia, Marcus, please pick up. We can fix this. Julia. I made a mistake, but it doesn't have to end like this. Julia. Please don't ruin me at work. I can make this right. I ignored every single one. Then I got another message. Not from Julia. From an unknown number. Unknown. You think you've won? I smirked. Me oh, Tyler. I didn't win. You just lost. 3 dots appeared. Then disappeared. I leaned back, satisfied. Tyler had spent months thinking he was in control. Now he was realizing the truth. He had never been in control. Not even once. Later that night, I parked outside a cheap motel, one of those places with flickering neon signs and a reputation for looking the other way. I had no plans of staying there. But Julia did. After everything that had happened, after her career imploded and her reputation crumbled, she had nowhere else to go. I watched as she stepped out of her car, her movements slow and exhausted. She looked around nervously, like she thought I'd be waiting to finish her off. Good. She deserved to feel what I had felt. Betrayed. Powerless. Disposable. I rolled down my window just enough for her to see me. Her eyes locked onto mine, wide and filled with something that almost looked like hope. She took a step forward. I shook my head once, and then I drove away, leaving her in the wreckage of the life she had chosen. Tyler would be ruined by morning. Julia was already broken. And me? For the first time in a long time, I was free. I slept like a king that night. No tossing and turning. No lying awake next to a woman who was feeding me lies. Just deep, dreamless sleep. By the time I woke up, the world had already started to burn. The first notification came in at 7:13 a.m. A news article. Rising corporate star accused of workplace misconduct. Former employees speak out. I clicked the link, already knowing exactly what I'd find. Greg had wasted no time. The article wasn't just about Tyler's affair with Julia. It was about the pattern, how he had used his position to manipulate and pressure women before, how his last job quietly let him go instead of exposing the truth. But now the truth was everywhere. And judging by the rapid-fire texts from my contacts in the industry, Tyler Dawson was done. He was already trending on LinkedIn. Not in a good way. Disgraced former associate at Mitchell & Carter. HR nightmare. Wouldn't touch his resume with a 10-foot pole. This guy makes Weinstein look subtle. I almost felt bad. Almost. I was scrolling through the comments, enjoying the chaos, when another message came through. Not from Julia. Not from Tyler. From my lawyer. Everything's in motion. She'll be served today. I set my phone down and exhaled slowly. This was it. The final nail in the coffin. By the end of the day, Julia would receive the divorce papers. And there would be no coming back from it. I went to work like nothing had changed. sat in meetings, answered emails, smiled at my colleagues like my life hadn't just taken a complete 180 in the last 48 hours. But in the background, everything was still unraveling. At lunchtime, my phone buzzed again. "Greg, you seeing this?" He sent me a link. Another article. Mitchell and Carter distances itself from former employees following scandal. I smirked. I had only intended to take down Tyler. But Julia? She was collateral damage. Her name wasn't mentioned in the article, but I knew how these things worked. The whispers had already started. The kind of whispers that spread like wildfire in corporate offices. People would talk. People would connect the dots. And Julia would never recover. Good. She had spent months making choices that led to this moment. And now, she was finally paying the price. I didn't expect to see her that night. Didn't expect her to show up on my doorstep, looking like a shell of the woman I once knew. Her makeup was smudged, her hair a mess. She wasn't in her usual crisp office attire. She looked wrecked, like she hadn't slept, like she had been crying all day. Good. She stood there for a long time before finally speaking. "Marcus, please." I stared at her, waiting. She swallowed hard. "Can we talk?" I didn't say anything. Didn't invite her in. Didn't move aside. Julia shifted uncomfortably under my silence. "You served me divorce papers today." I tilted my head. "That's usually what happens when you cheat on your husband for half a year." Her face twisted. Marcus, I know I messed up, but can we at least talk about this before you throw everything away?" I let out a short laugh. "I'm not the one who threw everything away, Julia. That was you." She flinched. "I lost my job today," she whispered. "They didn't fire me outright, but they made it clear. People are talking. Clients are pulling away. They offered me a resignation package." I lifted a brow. "And?" She looked at me like she expected sympathy, like she thought I would feel bad for her. I didn't. And I took it. "Good." Julia's breath hitched. "Marcus, please. I don't have anywhere to go." I crossed my arms. "That's not my problem." Her lips parted, her expression pure devastation. "You're serious. Dead serious." She looked down at her hands, her breath shaky. "I don't know what to do." I let that hang in the air for a second before answering. "Figure it out." Tears welled in her eyes. "You can't just—" "Marcus, we've been together for 8 years." "Yeah," I said. "And you threw that away for some loser who used you as a stepping stone. How's that working out for you?" She didn't answer, because we both knew the truth. Tyler was in freefall, and she had been dragged down with him. I could see it in her eyes, the realization, the regret. But it was too late. Much, much too late. I sighed, stepping back just a little. "You should go, Julia." She shook her head. "Marcus, please. Leave." Her breath shuddered. Then slowly she nodded. And for the second time in 2 days, I watched my wife walk away. Only this time I felt nothing.
No sadness.
No pain.
No anger.
Just relief. Because this was almost over. And tomorrow, I'd wake up to a world where Julia no longer existed in mine. And I'd finally be free.